Tea time. Welcome everybody! Souldin of the Grin brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. Now then, today's tea time is completely unplanned, because when I'm not sure when I'm uploading this, the exact timing of it is pretty awkward. I was working on getting the collab tea time all sorted out before I even thought about recording any more tea times, but then Mum got me this year a very interesting calendar this Christmas time. My Christmas calendar this year is from the English Tea Shop brand, and it's a calendar of teas. I've got like roughly 2 sets of 12 different teas all the way leading up to Christmas, which means I've got roughly, I think, about 10 to 12 different teas which I've never tried before, meaning, and I like sharing my first impressions on the Grimm brothers through tea times and such, so I now have to make like 10 to 12 tea time episodes in the lead up to Christmas. Yay, because that's not hard to do when I've got work. I mean, I'm super grateful for the calendar. It's such a cool idea, and I'm grateful for the opportunity of trying so many more teas. But oh boy, this is a lot of discussions I'm going to have to think about. Like, today's tea time, I will be trying out the 1st of December tea, Moroccan Spice. It's a herbal tea. Brew time is 2 to 3 minutes, and I've brewed it for 3 minutes here. I've trying it with milk first time round. Herbal tea goes a bit better with milk than, say, green teas do. Although sometimes it doesn't look quite right, I'd say. And like I said before, in previous tea times, trying it first time with milk, I feel, helps a lot with these teas. It helps take a little bit of the edge off. Milk's like smooths the taste out a bit. And for information, it's an organic herbal tea with cinnamon, chicory, licorice, peppermint, ginger, and orange. The boxes are very small, so they can't fit much in terms of descriptions on. They just basically list the ingredients off. So those are the ingredients in this tea, and I shall be trying Moroccan Spice with milk out later. So then, for today's tea time, I kind of had to just randomly come up with a new idea, because I've got tea times sort of like planned. I've got tea times on a bit of a list here, but some of them I need to kind of do a little bit of research for, a little, organise myself a little bit more for. And me suddenly realising I've got a calendar made of teas just kind of came out of the blue. So for future tea times, I may not do tea time for every single day, because I may have work that day and as such not be able to find the time to do so, but I'm going to try to. I'm going to try to do all like 10 to 12 different tea times for each of these new teas I haven't tried before. In any case, yeah. So I'm kind of having to come up with this tea time subject out of the blue, just randomly come up with it. And so I thought to myself, well, something that's easy to talk about and there's a lot of potential to talk about is Pokemon. But my immediate thought then went to Pokemon Let's Go, and it's like, I've beaten that dead horse enough as it is, and, I think people probably gone sick and tired of hearing me complain about it. I think me complaining about it is kind of a good thing, because I feel some people's voices in terms of complaining about Pokemon Let's Go tend to be ignored quite a bit, just immediately dismissed as haters. So it's good to hear people express an opinion you may agree with, even if it's a bit of a niche opinion. People like, finding the odd person who does, even they don't agree with everything agrees on the few things that you rarely find those sort of people. But yeah, I'm not going to sort of continue talking about Pokemon Let's Go. I think I've made it pretty clear that I'm not a fan of it. But contrary to the popular belief here with probably with me in terms of complaining about it, it's not like I outright hate everything about it. It's more in terms of the concept of it that I hate. I feel in terms of reviews the better side with me. There's one by I think it's Scott Falco, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee with a side of salt. That's a very good video that I've felt myself agreeing a lot with. And I believe it was the Chase Face Show also did a review that I felt addressed quite a few of the points. They don't, one-to-one on my exact opinions, but they address a lot of the points and a lot of the things I tend to be in agreement with them. So I feel if you want to know my opinion to a degree, in a more fleshed out way, you might as well just watch those reviews instead. I feel they give a more balanced argument in terms of Pokemon Let's Go. But yeah, like I said, I feel I've talked about Pokemon Let's Go, or complained about Pokemon Let's Go enough, so I figured, let's think of something else. Let's complain about a different Pokemon game. Yeah, I thought, I could start talking about my least favourite Pokemon game, that being Pokemon Gold and Silver. And, it's a rare opinion to hear, and there may be other people who agree with me that they dislike Pokemon Gold and Silver. But I know I've got a person who does follow the channel and is quite a frequent commentator who likes Pokemon Gold and Silver, and I thought, it must suck for hearing me complain about Pokemon Gold and Silver all the time. So I feel I want to be a bit more, having this as part of a tea time and dedicated more specifically to Pokemon Gold and Silver, I feel I'd like to make this a more constructive criticism of Pokemon Gold and Silver, pointing out not just the bad, but also the good and ways I felt it could have been improved. I feel this is particularly good to talk about at this point because I will probably be playing Pokemon Silver fairly soon next year because the Nanka's Pokemon Miiverse adventure wow, where did the English grammar go there? The Nanka's Pokemon Miiverse Adventure series I do initially covered Pokemon Yellow, and to do a sequel it got voted through that I play through Pokemon Silver. So I will be playing Pokemon Silver most likely if I do proceed to do a Nanka's Pokemon Miiverse Adventure direct sequel next year. And I'm not a fan of Pokemon Silver, but I feel doing it in an interactive form may make it a better game for me. And I kind of feel that in the case that it does actually end up changing my opinion doing it in an interactive form, that I feel I should clarify my stance on Pokemon Gold and Silver. So, of course, to begin off with, I am the rare case who doesn't love Pokemon Gold and Silver. In fact, it's my least favourite Pokemon game. Sun and Moon claim close to being it for that record, but I'd probably say Pokemon Gold and Silver, in terms of it being a bit boring and duller and more disappointing rather than raging doing like Sun and Moon, makes itself reach the bottom of my Pokemon games list. That said, I don't think it's an outright terrible game. At its core, it's a Pokemon game, and they're all pretty good. Like, at worst, I'd give its score a 4 out of 10. And really, taking away how modern reviewers, or even older reviewers, as I found out through some video game history lessons, tend to inflate scores to insane degrees where anything below a 7 seems like it's bad, I do actually consider 5 an average, so 4 is below average. Gold and Silver is below average. In terms of Pokemon game, in terms of games, you could do far worse playing, but Pokemon Gold and Silver is a disappointment to me because it's the worst of the Pokemon games in my opinion. And the Pokemon has set itself a pretty high bar. That's the problem with video game series. You always end up comparing with the other entries in the series, and when one game sets a very high standard, a game that's middling tends to come across as a lot worse because you got its better games to compare it to. On the case of good parts of Pokemon Gold and Silver, because there are plenty of good parts about it. Introduced a heck ton of features. For instance, introduced held items and berry mechanics, and I love the berry mechanic. I love the held items. They also introduced the apricorns, a really neat feature which they didn't really bring back afterwards, but I really like that. The phone, which I actually think is the best sort of verse seeker styled thing they've ever introduced because there was a limitation to it. And so you had to, choose which trainers you want to be frequently calling you up. Do you want to go for the trainers who will give you berries or tell you, oh, there's a swarm of quillfish or dunsparce in the area? Or do you want to go for the trainers so you can have rematches and level ups and such? Some trainers are more frequent, like Joey. And other trainers rarely call you, sort of thing. But, they get you better, more exciting fights, sort of thing. And there's a lot of the new Pokemon I really liked. Sneasel, Shuckle, Ledian, Ladybird, Spinarak, Ariados, Bellossom, Dunsparce. Totodile is my favourite star of the Pokemon series. And Joe, I find a very beautiful region, particularly with Heart Gold, Soul Silver, really improving the design of it all. Really fleshing out its sort of design basis. And compared to the very boring Kanto in terms of design, Joe is a very lush and exotic sort of design that's really charming to go through. So there's a lot of positives to it. It's just the negatives end up dragging it down for me. For instance, one of the first negatives is I talk about how they've got a lot of cool Pokemon that I like, but they're very poorly distributed. Most of them in Gold and Silver. In Crystal, they improved it somewhat. And in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, they went a roundabout way of trying to improve it by using the Pokewalker to improve it. But basically, the Pokemon in Gold and Silver, and kind of the problem with Gold and Silver in general, is that it feels more like an expansion of Red and Blue than its own game, unlike other Pokemon games, particularly Black and White, which truly set itself apart. Pokemon Gold and Silver relies too much on being part of Kanto. I mean, it's literally right next to Kanto. It doesn't even have its own Elite Four technically because you go to Kanto to fight its Elite Four members. That's how the problem with Joe in terms of its distinctiveness, despite being the more distinct region compared to Kanto in terms of design. For instance, at the start you get Sentry and Hoo-Hoo along with Pidgey and Rattata in the first route encounters. After that first route, you'll rarely ever encounter Sentry again, but you'll encounter Rattatas everywhere. You get to the first sort of Violet Sea, I believe, the first sort of gym area, and there's a giant tower. What Pokemon is it dedicated to? Maybe it's a new grass type like Hoppip. No, it's dedicated to Bellsprouts, which is a very random choice at that. And the gym leader, oh, he's going to be using a new Johto Pokemon. No, he uses Pidgeys and Pidgeotto. And for some reason teaches Mudslap as the TM. Yeah. And then following afterwards, Bugsy, Kakuna, Metapod, and Cypher. Like, if you needed a powerful bug type, you literally introduced Heracross, who's a brutal bug type. Why go for Cypher? Like, it's a Kanto Pokemon. It's not even the Johto form of Scizor for its evolution. You know, a bug catching contest. You can't catch Ladybird and Spinarak, if I recall correctly. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself in the video. But you can't catch Ladybird and Spinarak in the bug catching contest. It's actually pretty much almost entirely Kanto Pokemon. Typings also was, and okay, of course, what's the first ghost type you can catch? Ghastly. What ghost types do the Johto gym use? I'm assuming that at least one of them would use a Mischievous. Nope. Ghastly, Haunters, and Gengars for out. They make an entire gym dedicated to just one Pokemon line. And, yeah, Johto Pokemon get poorly treated, much like X and Y get poorly treated later on. They introduced a lot of these cool Pokemon, but they don't tend to get focused on much. To the point where Slugma, Houndour, Mukrow, Sneasel, initially Crystal version did improve that, Mischievous, and Larvitar don't even appear in Johto. You only find them when you go to Kanto. And that makes no sense. You literally introduced them as Johto Pokemon. The Kanto region wasn't even initially in the game. They couldn't fit in. It's post-game, technically. Like, I'd count you as completing the game if you beat the Elite Four. So, technically, you've completed the game at what some consider the midway point. If you've conquered the Johto region, you have beaten the game. Kanto, whilst it is to say, Gold and Silver has the most expansive post-game content. Because I consider the Kanto region post-game content. To beat Red is not to clear the entire game. Sorry for spoiling this 20-year-old game, by the way. It's a post-game additional extra content, which if it wasn't for Iwata, wouldn't even been in the game to begin with. So it baffles me that some of the Johto Pokemon were suddenly exclusive to the Kanto region. Furthermore, problems in that sort of regard for Pokemon distribution. A lot of the Johto Pokemon are really hard to catch. Like, they don't make it easy. A lot of them are restricted to headbutts or swarms, where there's only 1%. Marill, the new kind of signature Pokemon of the Johto region, is like a 1% chance of finding it in Mount Mortar unless you happen to find it in a swarm, which don't really occur all that often unless you've got the phone call of the guy specifically to tell you when there's a swarm. Like, Dunsparce is hard to catch. Yanma's hard to catch. Heracross is hard to catch. Natu you can easily miss, sort of thing. Like, it's and actually it's out of the way. Sneasel you couldn't catch initially until Kanto region, until Crystal version fixed that mistake. Quillfish, I think I may have already mentioned Quillfish, but Quillfish, real annoying to try and catch. Snubbull runs away. They introduce all these cool Johto Pokemon and then make them really difficult to catch. Type distribution also wasn't all that good. I mentioned how it's pretty much a expansion of Kanto in a way, but in terms of typing, it didn't really expand it too well. For instance, Kanto had a severe lack of Ghost and Dragon types, and they then proceeded to introduce one Ghost type and one Dragon type. So I've mentioned a few complaints here, and I haven't even gone to the main complaint I have of the game, what actually truly breaks it for me. But to just briefly mention some ways to improve it. Well, for starters, more focus on the Johto Pokemon. Falconer should have had Hoo-Hoo and Noctowl instead. Or even a different Pokemon as like his signature Pokemon, rather than Pidgey and Pidgeot. Give focus on the Johto Pokemon there. Likewise, it should have been the case the Bugsy used, say, Heracross or Shuckle even. I mean, I think Shuckle would have been a bit unfair, but, not Cypher, not Kakuna, not Metapod. And Morty, oh gosh, he should have had a Mischievous. Like, that should have been his signature. Like, they should each have had Johto Pokemon as their signature Pokemon. I also feel the Dark type, there should have been a Dark type available earlier, like Spinarak. Really weird Pokemon. I feel the Bug Poison typing doesn't really gel too well for it. Would have been far more interesting if they made it a Bug Dark type, allowing you to get a Dark type earlier in the game. Because otherwise, the only Dark types you really have access to, because unlike Steel type where Magnemite got turned into Magneton, and Pinecone you can catch fairly easily with a Headbutt, so you can get a Fortress, which is part Steel, if I recall correctly. Unlike that, the Dark types, you've got Umbreon, which Friendship Raising was a pain in the ass in Gold and Silver. They really made you work for that, which I actually kind of like that. You got, for other Dark types, you've got Mukrow and Houndour, which are exclusive to the, and Larvitar, Tyranitar, Pupitar, which are all restricted to Kanto. You don't get many dark types, and you certainly don't get them soon, so... well, I went back to complaining again. But yeah, that's kind of like an issue. Like, I feel they should have had another Pokemon or two, which is part dark. Maybe even change one of the older Pokemon to potentially be part dark type. So much like the Magnemite line. I'm not thinking of anyone specifically here, but, you know, it's a case example. Like, you think when the Fairy type was introduced, tons of older Pokemon got changed into Fairies. As I said, yeah, more focus on the Johto Pokemon. Make it so that the swarms are more for the Kanto Pokemon rather than the Johto Pokemon. Again, kind of switch around things so that the Kanto Pokemon are hard to catch and the Johto Pokemon are focused on. And when you want to actually focus on the Kanto Pokemon, focus that in terms of actually getting to the Kanto region, where they suddenly become much more common and the Johto Pokemon become more obscure. Maybe even do a switch around where, say, the swarm Kanto Pokemon in the Johto region are actually really common in Johto, in Kanto, when you get to Kanto. Like the Pokemon that used to be such a pain in the ass to catch, the moment you get to that post-game content, wow, you can find them everywhere. So much easier. You just have to play a waiting game. Other ways to fix it. Oh, I'd realised most of my complaints kind of centered on the one point. My other two problems I'd address are the story and the leveling of the entire game. The story complaint is pretty simple. The story is weak, particularly in Gold and Silver, and despite their attempts to improve it, it kind of centers on Team Rocket, who have been to the point where they've got their, tails between their legs, are trying desperately to get their boss back. That comes across as kind of pathetic, and doesn't help there's a chance for them to have a comeback in the Kanto region with some post-game content, but it kind of gets finished off real quickly. There should have been a bit more oomph. There should have been like a sequence within that post-game content where they have another final sort of comeback sort of thing. We don't need our boss, we should have just sort of tried going at you head on straight away sort of thing. From the get-go, Gold and Silver needed characters to actually fleshed out as like Team Rocket to see, prominent leaders and such. Archer should have been a more prominent character from the beginning sort of thing. Like the Rocket Tower sort of takeover was pretty cool, but... Again, without a properly strong figurehead to it, it all felt a bit weak. There were certainly things that needed to be improved upon. They had the groundwork for it, but it wasn't until Heart and Gold Silver they made a proper attempt at making Team Rocket outside of Giovanni more of a threat in Gold and Silver. But again, still the plot is kind of there of, they can't match up to you sort of thing without their leader. They are desperate to get Giovanni back, which, again... makes them come across as rather weak. So something like that, again, I think primarily actually having more of an involvement of the Rocket in the post-game content would have been the primary way to help out with that. But kind of making them a bit bigger of a deal with more named characters, more flair to the characters, and just generally tougher. They're pretty easy to defeat for the most part. And that comes to the leveling system. You have to do so much grinding in Gold and Silver, because they did an interesting experiment where they tried to make one area kind of open world-esque. Similar, they did this once in Kanto before, but Gold and Silver took this to new levels of bad when they did the situation where basically the levels between Chuck, Jasmine, and Price are so similar you can do them in any order. At that point, heck, Price is weaker than Jasmine, despite how Jasmine's much quicker to get to, and there's no warning that she's suddenly a lot higher level. In fact, because she's using a steel type, which you have very little familiarity with, she was actually going to be the tougher one anyway. Whereas Price, who is closer to the sort of more plotline stuff that is more out of the way, you'd usually end up doing the Chuck and Jasmine stuff first, is weaker than Jasmine, making it a very boring battle because you're so much higher of a level. Likewise, a lot of the Lake of Rage Rocket stuff is a really low level. You just go in and just clean sweep throughout most of it, because they made it in the basis where you could choose which order you go in, which is an interesting experiment, but doesn't work. They need a more Skyrim-esque system, or a system even assisted by, I think it was Pokemon Origins, wherein, depending on the amount of gym badges you get, trainers get to become a higher level. You could probably keep wild Pokemon the same, even though that does make grinding a huge pain in the ass. Again, that's also a problem with Gold and Silver. The wild Pokemon are pathetically weak. They rarely ever level up, and particularly in Kanto, where suddenly they're really, really weak. It makes leveling a real problem, which is particularly problematic because there are suddenly huge level spikes in the Kanto region, particularly to fight the Red as the final challenge. You don't have any good area to ever level up in, and your phone calls with the limitations, which I thought was a cool idea, the limitations prove really aggravating because you don't have a good pool of trainers to challenge to level yourself up. Likewise, in the Kanto region, post-game, which I feel kind of negatively affect the levels, they kind of squish all the levels for the Johto region. And in the Kanto region, because you might encounter most of the gym leaders in any order, the gym leaders are all kind of in the same sort of level sort of space, with only Blue being the only properly higher level gym leader, and then it spikes the need to about 10 to 20 levels higher just in order to fight Red. Which, of course, fixes there. As mentioned, the badge system would help, so you kind of make your own order. That's probably something that they may want to look into in the future. I'm a little worried that that sort of mindset would lead to an open world Pokemon game, and as you all know, I'm not a fan of open world games. But the badge idea would at least help, even in terms of a linear Pokemon game which decides to have that brief moment of making itself open. Again, much like what the Kanto region admittedly itself did this same fault, with Koga and Sabrina both being equal levels, which wasn't too much of a problem, except for when it came to the Silph Coast situation, where the Rocket Grunts were all super easy, and then suddenly Blue and Giovanni in it were really high levels. Yeah. So you hear my problems with Pokemon Gold and Silver. I've made them quite clear. Pokemon Gold and Silver added a lot of features, but they never really took full advantage of them as well. Like, I think Pokemon Gold and Silver was good for introducing the sort of features, but it never truly made use of them. The other games had to build upon it. But, to be fair, it is the introductory point. I'm not going to fight too much for that sort of thing. There are problems with Pokemon Gold and Silver and the ways I feel like could have been improved. I think I had a sip of my tea just now. I didn't even realise. Without even realising I took a sip of my tea. And I haven't actually talked about my tea, have I? But yeah, to summarise Pokemon Gold and Silver, not a fan of the games, but I'm hoping that Nanka's Pokemon Miiverse Adventure, or NPMAK as I will be calling it, will help me improve my opinion on it. Of course, there are ways it could have improved my opinion with the things I've mentioned there, and I felt the remakes could have had the opportunity to make improvements to it, but I never felt it made enough of an improvement. In fact, I feel the sequels, the remakes they've been doing of the Pokemon games have been kind of disappointing each time. It feels like you had the potential to improve it quite a lot, each of these games, but I felt they always stuck too much to the original games. In any case, I'm going to try this Moroccan tea after, having you hear me all complain about one of the most beloved Pokemon games for a good 23 minutes. So, let's see what this tea tastes like. Very sweet. Not a fan of the... that's a very, very odd aftertaste. Tastes nice at first, and then it tastes almost minty. I think that probably is the licorice? Maybe? No, that's a peppermint. Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely get the peppermint. I think I tasted a bit of the ginger there. Ginger's nice. The cinnamon's probably giving it such a sweet taste. And the gingers are no nice. Oh, no, the peppermint. The peppermint ruins it for me. When I get the cinnamon makes it rather sweet, but not too sweet. And licorice also makes it sweet. The orange also helps that. The orange gives it a nice fruity tang to it, which I think is a lot better addition to the cinnamon and licorice. And you get that tiny little hint of the ginger, and it's a really nice bit of ginger, and it's immediately washed over by the peppermint. So, which unfortunately, the peppermint dominates the aftertaste, which is a real shame. Maybe without milk, the ginger gets to shine more, and maybe the milk is subduing the ginger, but not subduing the peppermint. Do I need to clean my teeth now that I've had a peppermint tea? Not sure on that. In any case, thank you for listening to this randomly considered tea time. Thank you for listening to my opinions of Pokemon Gold and Silver before playing for Pokemon Silver. I think this let's see, if I count Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, it'll be like the 6th time I'm playing this. 6th or 5th time I'm playing this, but yeah, maybe I'll have better opinions of Gen 2 with my 5th time of playing it. In any case, thank you so much for listening. Feel free to comment below. What is your least favourite Pokemon game? What's the good points of it, the bad points of it? And how do you feel you'd improve your least favourite Pokemon game? I mentioned how I'd improve Gold and Silver myself. So hey, mention your least favourite Pokemon game. Whether you consider it a bad game or whether you consider it simply bad in comparison to the other Pokemon games. And mention how you'd improve it to make it more to your liking. So, yeah. Cheers, everyone!